Let's Get To presents Go Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball.
Well, this is Go Astros, and this tone of this show could have been much different. So I just got to think, everybody, let's just bow your heads. Our Lady of Walk-Off Victories, pray for us.
Pray for us.
And St. Jeremy Pena, pray for us.
Pray for us.
You know, it's funny. Look, obviously, I think we are definitely the four of us. I feel big today. The three of us. The three of us.
Moon Knight, how many personalities are you carrying today?
I don't know, but more that last episode was good. But this is not the show for that. But obviously, we're still living in too soon of a sample size to tell. And I think had we lost, I don't know that any of us would have felt marginally different than we probably feel today. One of the things that I've noticed is there's been this like rash criticism of James Click by knee-jerk people. Does at some point James Click get credit for not signing Correa, knowing what they had in Pena? Brian, you want to go first, since you were, I think, a Pena believer before anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, part of the thought behind, not signing Correa is that you had a major league ready shortstop. And look, some of the best things James Click has done is be able to evaluate his AAA players and say that Chas McCormick, Jake Myers, Jeremy Pena are major league caliber players, even though they're not top prospects. Hey, good news. Jeremy Pena just entered MLB Pipeline's top 100 prospects today. So congratulations to him on the less important accomplishment yesterday. And so when I look at sort of the, strengths and weaknesses of James Click so far, it's still mostly an incomplete grade, right? He's still, building someone else's, team here, but the things he's done best is figure out who he has at AAA that is really good and can be major league players. And those decisions have gone pretty well.
Andy, what about you? I mean, I know that, again, it's so hard to have these conversations on this show because all three of us are pretty reasonable with the sample size thing. But I mean,
I can fly off the handle if you want me to. I hadn't had that much coffee. To Brian's point, it's not just evaluating what you have in AAA or a AA that's going to be able to contribute to the team, but he's evaluating somebody else's AAA and AA players because he didn't draft any of these guys. He hadn't followed any of these guys. He hasn't set a development path for any of them because that hadn't been his role yet. The guys he has drafted are in North Carolina right now.
Yeah.
Maybe they get to Texas someday. Maybe that, who knows, but that's still a TBD. I think he is a guy that, not for any fault, just he's going to be keyed on low-key moves right now because that's what the Astros need him to do. He was never going to be fully involved in the Correa signing or not signing. That was ultimately Jim Crane's decision to make. And with Click's input, we've got a guy who can play defense, who is not going to cost you $30 million a year. Can we find offense elsewhere? That's still the question that we're probably going to dig into a little bit today. But you make a decision, you move forward because you've got dollars to spend elsewhere. I think some of the griping I've seen, again, is a misunderstanding of how the Astros and most front offices work. It's not like Jim Crane hands Click a checkbook at the beginning of the season and goes, okay, there's a $30 million balance on it. See how much you can spend. That's not how conversations go. So he's very TBD right now. I think he's doing a good job. I think there's going to be some things he's going to have to address. I think our center field situation is pretty untenable long term. I think catching is a real problem.
Yeah, I want to get to the catching thing. It's weird. I think I part ways with you on the center field. I think the center field position is untenable unless Dusty picks a center fielder. I think this concept of rotating both right now, Siri and McCormick. But like Brian, I loved McCormick in the leadoff spot, and clearly he did too. He's a fast guy. He usually makes contact. I don't know. I know you're Mr. I don't care about lineup construction, but I really like that electricity coming out, leading off the game.
Yeah. Dusty made was a very revealing comment that Jake Kaplan reported, our good friend Jake Kaplan reported, I think on Friday, which when he was asking about the leadoff spot and putting Pena there initially, is that there was only so many candidates. one thing that baseball has moved to is you just put your best hitters at the top of the lineup. Look at the Angels that have Ohtani and Trout, as their first two batters, or the Phillies that have Kyle Schwarber. I feel Kyle Schwarber today because Angel Hernandez and him are having.
I love that, by the way.
And we are all Kyle Schwarber.
Emily Nyman wins the award for best tweet about that, because she said when you're arguing with your ex and your song at the club comes on and it started out with, and then you just got real anime. I don't know. Cracked me up. Emily Nyman for the win.
So we have all said those things about Angel Hernandez, and we will continue to say them. So Kyle Schwarber, we feel you. But it yet reflects Dusty, who is, evolved over time, but is still a little bit behind the time. If it was up to me, I'd put Kyle Tucker in the leadoff spot, or I'd put Alex Bregman in the leadoff spot, based on sort of the rest of the lineup. But Dusty kind of conceives he needs a fast guy up there, with Altuve on the IL. It's fine. It's also worth noting lineup effects are very small. So, putting the ideal lineup in there is, only going to get you a 10th more of a run per game. So,
that's going to be on his tombstone, by the way. Brian's lineup effects are very small. What did you, so what has the center field spot concerning you then, Andy, if you said it's untenable?
Well, I think part of the problem is that we keep playing Jose Siri. And he's an out of control buffoon. And I know Astros Twitter seems to love him because he hustles, but he runs like his pants are on fire. There's no rhyme or reason to anything that he does. And I will give him credit this year so far. Defensively, he has been better than he was last year. No balls have hit him in the chest and he dropped them. He hasn't run into anybody as of yet. That's happening. Nico Goodrum took one for him though, and almost took out Pena a couple games ago. And this is going to be one of those anecdotal versus statistical conversations, but I do think lineup construction matters, because I do think that having lefty-righty matchups matter. I do think having a guy on base with Michael Brantley coming up who knows where to place the ball matters. And it may be a 10th of a run, but ultimately those things add up. The Astros lost 3 one-run games in a row. And if they win 2 of those, we're not having the sad conversation we're having about what's wrong with the Astros. It's just a slow start. And still, with all that, we have not played 10% of the season yet.
Yeah. One of the things I thought was a good conversation that I'll steal. I heard a little bit listening to Sean Salisbury this morning coming in right before Steve Sparks joined the show. And congrats to Steve Sparks, and his daughter was married. So, mazel. But they wanted to rate biggest concerns of the Astros 15 games in. And the consensus was 1 and 2 are Odorizzi and Tucker. But the consensus was 4 weeks from now, Tucker won't be a concern anymore, and Odorizzi still will. Brian, are you okay with that assessment? I mean, I feel like I'm the last person who kept thinking Odorizzi was going to turn it around. I'm not going to make a prediction like I did literally on Twitter. Did y'all see my prediction? I said he's going six strong with 8 punchies. And then
that's six strong batters, you said, right?
And he almost gave up 8. He almost allowed 8 walks. So you were close.
I was close.
That game was played at dinner time, so I sat down to dinner shortly before the opening pitch, had dinner, and looked at did it afterwards, and well, it was all over. So very efficient from that standpoint. Jake Odorizzi was a league average pitcher last year, and I think that would be a statement that most Astros fans would not believe. He had a ERA plus of 101. Those stats are normalized to 100. Obviously, he's been really poor this year, but he had a poor start last season, came on and was better as the season went along. So I don't think we have to give up on Jake Odorizzi yet. They are moving to a 6-man rotation this week, so Christian Javier will be in the starting rotation. I believe he's pitching Wednesday in Arlington. But Odorizzi's pitching Tuesday, so 6-man, he'll still be in there. They will, I think, keep that up. They're playing 33 games in 34 days, starting with 17 straight, which they started with the Blue Jays. So, we need all these guys to pitch. and Odorizzi kind of needs to figure some stuff out. And, there's a track record that he'll be better than this. He's not a great pitcher. He's probably never been a great pitcher, but if he can get up to average, I'd be content with that.
I think, Andy, where I fit on the Odorizzi thing is last year, I know you and I, and I think Brian as well, were really cut him more slack than most other Astros fans because he had the shortened spring training after coming off of an injury. To me, my concern is that excuse doesn't exist anymore, right? Like, if anything, he should be way ahead of the hitters, as has been proved across Major League Baseball. You feel like he's going to end up being, like, do you see him as a middle reliever at some point, or do you feel like we're stuck with him?
I wish that I knew what I know he had an arm injury in 2020, and he pitched 1 or 2 games and then was out. We signed him late in spring training. He got thrown in some really crappy situations last year, which I think hardwired an impression on a bunch of fans. And we're spoiled as Astros fans these last 5 years because everybody who comes into the rotation, you're comparing to Morton, to Verlander, to Cole, and it's not those guys. Well, they suck. That there's no line.
Sure, yeah.
You're a future Hall of Famer or you suck.
Unless you're Lance McCullers and you get all of the leeway you need.
Well, there is that. He has fantastic hair, so that's
yeah.
I guess that's what we're giving him credit for. And I think Odorizzi was unfairly maligned because of that last year. But to your point, though, this year, it appears from watching that he can't place his he doesn't trust his fastball and he can't place his breaking ball. And that, if I'm looking at his last start, exactly what I would expect to happen happened. Why would you swing the bat?
Yeah.
Unless he's grooving on a 3-0 pitch, because that's all that he went 3-0, 3-1 on every batter he faced, I think except for one.
Well, and he was, and yeah, why squeezing the bat? And I will, fairness to him, he was getting squeezed a little bit. Like, there were.
Sure, but you've got to earn those calls.
Right.
Even when you're a veteran, game by game, you've got to earn that, hey, I know where the plate is. I know where the zone is. I'm going to throw it to the zone. He wasn't close on a lot of pitches, and he started getting better towards the end, but by then it was a little bit too late because it was still bases loaded, nobody out, and we're walking in runs. Umpires are human. That last thing was a ball. This next one's probably a ball too.
Yeah.
I just don't see a long-term future with him because I don't think he's a bullpen piece. He's can't be sent down to AAA, I don't believe, and I don't know why he would accept that assignment if he could be.
Sure.
But I can't see that he is, especially when we get out of this stretch. I think he stays in the rotation for this 33-day stretch that we have. That's just going to be murder on our staff. But after that, you're going to have to answer some questions, and I think he's he's unfortunately making himself an easy answer right now. I expect Javier to outperform him. And if that happens, why do you stick with Odorizzi and almost guarantee a loss or at least a struggle every 5th day? I just don't see the upside for the Astros, especially if you believe Lance McCullers is coming back sometime late June, early July.
That, Brian, that storyline is just, I think it's a typical of what we've come to expect from the Astros, right? Like, we thought he'd make the ALC. We thought he'd make the World Series. As long as we get to the World Series, he's here. I mean, do you think we're gonna? I'm not even counting on seeing Lance McCullers, and then I'm not counting on him being truly an asset this season, Brian.
I mean, McCullers has had one season where he's pitched the whole. I mean, I guess he pitched the whole year in 2015, though most of the first of that was in the minor leagues, and then he did it again last year in 2021. So, you bake in some injuries with Lance McCullers. Hopefully, that means he's fresher in the second half of the season. But I think that's the real sort of inflection point on Jake Odorizzi. And maybe someone else needs him and they can trade him, but I don't expect them to get really anything back for him. He's probably, used an NBA term, a negative value contract at this point, even though his contract isn't that sort of strong. But he will get a chance to turn around. He's not as bad as he was in the start against the Angels, but he's going to have to make some adjustments and improve to be helpful to the Astros this season.
Yeah, and maybe a start against the Rangers is exactly what he needs. I mean, looking at the schedule though, it's not easy. Not only is it 34 games and 33 games in 34 days, but after you're done with this stretch, you have the Blue Jays again, you have the Mariners for 3, you have the Tigers for 4, and I don't think that's any slouch. I mean, it's actually going to be a pretty tough 10-game stretch once we get done with Arlington.
And I think that's what's concerning to me about his appearance against the Angels is that game Trout was out. So you literally had to pitch around Ohtani and Rendon, and
yeah.
the rest of that lineup is very, very manageable, and he couldn't manage it. He made Joe Adele look like he had plate discipline, which is, a thing.
Yeah. Brian, what about you? I mean, like looking at just the outcome of the schedule.
Yeah, it tends to be a little tougher here at the beginning of the season. It eases off in the middle to the later part for the Astros. But, outside of the Blue Jays, none of these are really sort of playoff teams coming up in the near future. Depends on what we think of the Mariners, but the Mariners should have won 78 games last year. So,
those are your first place Seattle Mariners. Certainly.
They got that fun differential going.
So, but regardless of that, they will presumably, they won't play the Royals every week. If they did this weekend. And so, there's opportunity in that schedule. The Tigers are off to a rough start. We'll see how they sort of transition now that their purpose in life isn't getting Miguel Cabrera 3,000 hits. But yeah, it's not there aren't easy touches outside of the Rangers series, and hopefully going against a below average lineup and struggling team will be helpful for Jake Odorizzi.
Let's turn to Kyle Tucker then. I mean, Andy, I for one am not worried, even though he did look sort of bad yesterday on some swing and misses that, not as bad as Diaz did, who looked like he just didn't want to be up there in the extra innings and just swing 3 times and left. But yeah, I mean, I'm assuming you share the same feeling, not a whole lot of concern for Tucker.
He had a 3-hit game on Saturday. I mean, it's baseball. There's going to be days where you hit the ball and days where you don't. And Kyle Tucker, I think, is proven that he's going to be one of these players that we talk about every year that just doesn't hit in the early part of the season. Whether that's bad luck, whether that's a bad approach, I don't know that any of us are qualified to say. Last year, it was very much bad luck. He was hitting the ball really, really hard, and it was right at guys. This year has been some of that, but not as much just from looking. And I'm sure I haven't got finished reading Brian's Substack this morning, but I'm sure he addresses some of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brian, you have those numbers for us? How much of it is? But
I'm not worried about Kyle Tucker at the end of the day, because he has proven that he can adjust his swing and hit major league pitching. I think he's just one of those guys that's a slow starter for whatever reason. Bregman has a history of being that guy as well.
Brian, what about Tucker's numbers?
Let's see. So his actual batting average is 127. His expected batting average is 287. His actual slugging is 236. His expected slugging is 595. Why is it 2 Aprils in a row that we have the exact same story about Kyle Tucker? I don't know. That's just baseball in some ways. He did this last year, and you can see in the numbers, I wrote about it last year that he was, thought maybe he's hitting into the shift too much. No, he wasn't doing that last year. It just took some time for his numbers to get to what they should be. And we should see that again relatively soon on Kyle Tucker. Fingers crossed it starts tonight in Arlington.
For as much as I don't like the idea of banning the shift, it's going to help Alvarez. I mean, Alvarez and Tucker are about to become even much better statistical hitters than they already are, right? Like Tucker hits in the shift like it's going out of style. Andy?
I don't like the shift going away, and I know that's not what you were just bringing up. They're both guys that I'm not worried about. And by mid-season, they'll be hitting in form. And by the end of the year, they'll have a nice page of counting stats for both of them. It's just a matter of, with the Astros, it's always been a matter of sequencing. With really any baseball team, it's a matter of sequencing, right? Because you always have somebody on your team that can hit. Hopefully you have 5 or 6 guys that can hit. And if that's the case, it's a matter of doing that at the same time or in sequence, so you actually score runs from it. because otherwise you're the 87 Astros and you're Glenn Davis and you can hit 30 home runs, but nobody's on base. So does it matter?
What do we know about Altuve's injury then? Do we have any, again, we're getting that sort of vague. It's not so bad. We have
it's not vague. James Click has said yesterday, miraculous recovery.
Unprecedented healing. This is apparently never been seen before in the history of, well, I don't believe James Click's a medical doctor, so in the history of general managing.
He'll be back on the 29th is what they're basically saying.
So back when his IL stint is up.
Yes.
I mean, but they said that about Brian Presley, and he did not come back yesterday. He'll come back later this week. Maybe we think he threw a batting practice session yesterday, so hopefully that went well.
But I don't think Altuve is a prolonged stay based on what they're telling us at this point.
Yeah, and hopefully we're not going to deal with Altuve what we dealt with Bregman the last 2 years, where it just sort of lingers or it changes the way he plays the game. You know, it's too bad he can't be back for this Rangers series and get a little healthy against those guys. I have no respect for them. Is that clear? Do we get that?
You've made that perfectly clear on many occasions, and look forward to seeing you make that clear on other occasions as well.
I mean, it's kind of a weird matchup, though, because they do score a lot of runs. They are going to hit the ball. Odorizzi is going to actually have to throw strikes when he gets a start against them. But their pitching is really, really, really bad so far, and they give up a lot of runs. So I very much could see a series where it's a bunch of 10-8 type games where nothing is settled until the 9th inning, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that too, and that's going to stress me out. I really just want to beat them like they stole something.
I mean, they probably did. They stole a stadium design.
They sure did, yeah. Where's the intellectual property complaint?
No. Hey, look, if what you want to steal is the interior and make the outside look like a Tractor Supply warehouse, sure, fine by me.
Fine by me. Yeah, looks like it really literally
a copy apparently.
It really looks like Jerry Jones's tool shed. Like, hey, get me a weed eater. Where is it? Well, it's over there in the tool shed. But we're gonna change. Pace real quick. All three of us are also into the college baseball. LSU ranked 22, Texas ranked 10, A&M making some noise, ranked 21. Probably going to make a regional. Just overall, like, Andy, big win, which we'll talk a lot more about on Joys of Mudville when the bet gets paid off. But overall, just impressions of your Aggies.
They're hitting now. We don't have a bullpen. I don't expect a deep run into anything. But if you understand what Rob Childress left with last year, and the A&M administration did no favors to the baseball team, right? So even knowing we're in the age of transfers and NIL and all this other stuff, they let Rob Childress die on the vine with no contract extension, let him retire with no ready replacement. And so, as you would imagine, recruiting fell off to last year's really dismal performance. Up until then, Childress had been a very competent coach and his teams were competent. They just weren't very clutch. And I know that's not something you can measure, but I can measure it in the lack of titles. I mean, it just is. You're not winning SEC championships. You're not winning tournament championships. You're not making the College World Series outside of the regionals. Tailed off of that. Schloss is a revelation. And I think everybody who followed TCU knows how good a coach he is. But he's taken a team of transfers and I think maybe 5 holdovers from last year. And no pitching to speak of, at least from a bullpen perspective, and gotten them to the point where I think they're number 21 on one of the RPIs. They should be ranked when D1 baseball does their rankings today. They've been holding off for a really long time. They played really, really well in Alex Box Stadium against LSU. They upset number 4 Arkansas this weekend, winning 2 out of 3. A little bit of a nail biter yesterday because they blew an 8-run lead at some point, but didn't completely blow it because he still won the game. But it's exciting times with a great recruiting class to follow. I think you're going to put A&M back on the map to be a tough out in the SEC going forward.
Yeah, like I was, so according to D1 baseball, A&M is now ranked 21 this week. So they went from non-ranked. And Brian, how are you feeling about LSU? You know, one of the premier historical programs in the sport.
Yeah, LSU was also under a coaching transition. Longtime coach Paul Maneri retired after the 2021 season. They sent him off with a regional victory up in Oregon. and then a sweep in the super regionals to Tennessee. By the way, Tennessee is 17-1 in the SEC, right, number one. So shout out to them, because that seems impossible in the modern. Frankly, it seemed impossible when there were two good teams in the SEC back in the early 90s, much less today.
That ass beat by the Longhorns in Houston, but that was a different Longhorn team. We'll get there in a minute.
Enjoy that moment there, James. But anyway, biggest problem for LSU this year is apparently, they hired a new coach, Jay Johnson, who'd been coaching at Arizona. He was a hitting coach. He was Chris Bryant's hitting coach at University of San Diego before moving up the chain. And he's really good at teaching hitting and apparently not good at teaching fielding. They have a really bad defensive numbers this year, both in the advanced numbers and just in the number of errors and bad plays they make, which is a much bigger deal in college baseball where they're more frequent. So it's been a transition from some really good defensive teams at LSU over the last 2 years. Shout out to Alex Bregman, defensive shortstop, among others. And so the LSU is 10-8 in the SEC, looks to be at the moment a number 2 seed, and it's been a uneven season at LSU, but like all teams, we're looking forward to the postseason. If you can make a run there, hey, everything goes away.
And it's funny, Andy knows this. The only team I like beating better than the Rangers is beating Baylor, because I think they should not be allowed to have sports after what happened with the rape scandal.
Hey, Jim, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
I'm sorry, which Baylor scandal are you referring to?
Yeah, not when the basketball team sawed the guy's head off, the institutional acceptance of campus-wide rape. It's been a weird season for Texas, and after seeing injuries to the pitching staff, all of a sudden it all seemed to fall off a cliff. But it does feel like outscoring Baylor, I think 40-4 this weekend, and Baylor's a good team. I think it was a good start, and hopefully Texas might be rounding into form and still make get a regional at least. So
Baylor's like a water cracker to clear the palate of the last few weeks.
Maybe a little bit. I don't know. It was good to see them actually pitch well, because they've been hitting well all season. So that does wrap up.
Well, hold on. I want to give one more college baseball shout out, which is my actual alma mater, Pomona College in Claremont, California. 14-3 in the SCIAC. That's the Southern California Intercollegiate Athletic Competition, the finest conference in Division III, at least according to me. And they won 2-3 against conference leaders Laverne this week. That's the University of Laverne, which tragically does not have big cursive L's on their logo, though. Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you put a big L right here?
I mean, but they won 2-3 this weekend to put them in position to make a run for the conference title. So go Sagiens.
And you know what? Let's do a shout out, Andy, to Jess Canaster, who's a big part of our Let's Get To team, who was telling us he had to work the video board at what he called, it was 2 teams that he said was part of the 43rd best conference in baseball, in college baseball. It was like a 4-hour game that only went 5 innings, and there was a 16-run first inning. So poor Jess. That does wrap us up this week. Hopefully, we're going to be able to talk about a 4-game sweep over the Arlington. Yes, they still do not deserve to put Texas on their uniform, Rangers. Until then, go Stros.
Go Stros.
Go Stros. Where are you, Martin Maldonado?
Go Astros is a presentation from Twitchy Dolphin Media and part of the Let's Get To Baseball Network.